feel, just kind of bad. You start getting the chills, sleepy, lethargic. Then there's a feeling of impending doom.
That impending doom.
When you really figure out what it's about and you realize you don't have another dose.
You don't have anything else.
You can't just
anyone listening
ease yourself off.
Knows that feeling. It's like, oh my God.
Anybody who's been there, Then it all depends on how much you've been taking and what you've been taking and what kind of other drugs have been prescribed with them.
Or what you've been taking illegally
with it. Or what you've been using illegally
mm-hmm.
with it. Within about 12 hours, you're feeling the initial effects of nausea, going to the bathroom, possibly beginning to throw up. The restless legs and arms is beginning, kind of an uncontrollable kick, or the Jones, as they would call it. You try to sleep with no avail, and in some of these treatment places, they can give you something.
They can help, yes.
That can help ease it off, like Xanax or Valium or some sort of anti-nausea or anti-diarrhea. But when you hit about 24 to 48 hours, you're pretty much full-blown in it. It's like a real bad case of the flu.
And when you get into it, when you're going through this, you don't really realize, because when I went for pain management, the doctor, and I have wonderful doctors, they gave me a sheet of paper saying, you're at risk for addiction and this, and I was in so much pain at the time. I'm thinking, I didn't care. I came home with this gigantic bottle of Percocet, and I'm like, whoa, this is like fabulous. Look at this.
Right.
And we don't really think about this stuff. So after, you go through your initial withdrawal symptoms, and like we said, our personal, our coaching business, we don't do intervention, and we don't do detox, and we don't do actual treatment for an addict. We recommend that you go into a detox center for at least 3 to 5 days where you're supervised by a medical professional. They know what they're doing, and they have, ways to handle you better than what we do. And then, usually you're into some kind of treatment center after that. We're going to discuss that a little bit later. But it's after that 2-week mark that you hit what we call post-acute withdrawal symptoms, or it's called PAWS for short. And that is when a lot of times when we start to discover dual diagnosis, which means the person has got some underlying cause like ADHD or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. Like we talked about in the one show with sex addiction, that often addiction is a symptom of a much bigger disease.
It sure is.
Yeah, and it's a coping mechanism for something else. So when you're in a center, you actually have the ability to be supervised to see what else is going on with you. And you're also you're with people, you're in some kind of program and you're working some kind of steps, and, you may be feeling anxiety, irritability, low enthusiasm, you got that brain fog, you don't really feel like yourself. But here's the good news in it. When you're going through it, you feel like hell, you feel like crap, you feel like you're going to want to die, you're going to wish for death. But the longer you stay sober, the longer the gaps in between this problem goes. The highs and the lows become much further apart. But when you go back to using again, if you get tired of saying, forget about, I'm going to go out and use because I can't stand the way I'm feeling, you got to go back to square one again and go through all that initial
adjustment. Does.
And I'm not going there. I can't handle that particular feeling. So a lot of times, pause might last up to 2 years, depending. But, on the plus side, some people may not ever get it. But, it is something to be mindful of. So next, I'd like to talk, Leaf's going to talk a little bit about, what exactly goes on in the brain of an addict. How do we become addicted, and what's going on in this process?
Well, let's look at what happens in the brain of an addict. Essentially, in a normal, healthy brain, there's a part known as the reward center, we'll call it. And it registers pleasurable feelings in response to natural occurrences, life-affirming stimuli such as eating, sex, those sort of things. Okay, these activities are rewarded with feelings of enjoyment and happiness. Okay, these sensations of pleasure are caused primarily by the result of neurotransmitters. Now, neurotransmitters are neurochemicals that carry messages in the brain.
Yes. Such
as dopamine and serotonin. Okay, the reward center then communicates with the other areas of the brain, including the centers involved in decision-making, memory, and mood, and tells these areas how much you enjoyed eating or having sex or whatever it was. Okay, in this way, human beings learn which things are pleasurable. We associate these activities with a sense of well-being, and we make further decisions based on this information.
And that's what really sets it up. We have the limbic system of the brain, and where it sends all the addiction messages too, back and forth. And of course, you like the feeling that the euphoria that opiates give you, because not only does it dull the pain, but you feel good.
Sure do.
I had, with me, I was like ready to clean the house. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I had never felt so energized in my life. I didn't even care about the pain. And that was part of the reason, that got me kind of going on it. And then one thing I want to discuss too is relapse. And I think personally, in all the research work I've done, I think relapse is probably the most misunderstood aspect of addiction.
I believe it is also.
Relapse is information. What it's saying is that the current level of treatment that we're using is not appropriate, or it needs to be adjusted.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's not working. It just means that we're experiencing breakthrough symptoms, and we have to make a change. It has to be adjusted. Plus, it takes the addict an average, of 3 times to get the treatment option that's right for them.
Sure does.
And this doesn't even necessarily mean get sober. I know people that withdraw and go back on and withdraw. They go on it, continuously, because they just haven't gotten it in their minds yet that they're ready to stop this behavior, that it's killing them. So the first time we go into treatment, it's usually out of coercion. Someone's forcing us to go. Someone's
court
saying,
order.
you got to go, or else you're having an intervention and you're being forced to go into rehab. So you go in, you're like, whatever, I'm here. Tell me what I got to do so I can hurry up and get the heck out of here.
Right.
I got stuff to do. So you're back out and you're using again. The second time, you may be more, this really does kind of suck. Maybe I do need to pay attention to this, but maybe it's not quite the right treatment for you.
You're not to that point where you really want to bite in and hold on.
Well, maybe it's not even the type that's for you, and I'm not talking bad about the 12 steps, but I'm just saying that the 12 steps aren't for everybody, and that I feel that we really should, I'm working myself to develop and enhance and support different methods of rehab and treatment center procedures, because what we're seeing today is not working. It's like a revolving door. People are going in and they're coming right back out, and we're really not seeing any, I don't want to use the word cure, but we're really not seeing much beyond the 1-year success rate. AA after 1 year is only 35%. After 5 years, it's 10% success rate. So this is something that we need to examine a little bit more. I was looking at a book by Dr. Lance Dodds, and it's called The Sober Truth, Debunking the Bad Science Behind the 12 Steps in the Rehab Industry. And he also states that the failure rate for AA and NA is 90%. And he says that it simply doesn't work. And it's not, and he said it's not widely publicized because, it's a program, it's easy to follow, it's in an order, it's easy to institute. It gives addicts something to follow. And as an addict, we do need structure, we do need organizations, but maybe we can add something different, or, change it up a little bit, or maybe come up with a new set of 12 steps or 10 steps or whatever.
Right.
And his biggest complaint is that he said it's harmful to the 90% that don't do well for several reasons. One of them is that everyone believes it is the right treatment and that AA is never wrong. If you fail AA, it's because you failed, and that's simply not true. And I agree with what he says. I have been through treatment after treatment after treatment, and it wasn't until I got into school that I learned hypnosis, and I learned that by getting to the core of why I use substances did I finally get well and no longer have the need to use. And like I said on our last show, you can take everything, and when you narrow it all down to something, usually people choose addiction because somewhere, somehow, they just don't feel good enough about themselves.
Right.
And I learned that in my hypnosis class. So,
and another thing, is like one size does not fit all in treatment.
No, it doesn't.
And I was reading an article in Psychology Today, And it was called The Truth About Addictive Triggers. Okay, and this is dealing with this very subject of addiction and treatment. And, it's kind of funny because my wife and I were talking, and I found out it is Dr. Lance Dodds.
The same doctor. We had no idea.
Who wrote this for Psychology Today, and he's viewing this from kind of more of a compulsory type situation where, we look at certain things and we say, okay, for instance, we're powerless over alcohol or we're powerless over opiates. But then you have people that will go on and they won't touch these things anymore, but they'll go on to a secondary addiction. One day it was powerless over alcohol. The next day it's powerless over peanut butter. Now, people right now are saying I'm making a mockery, probably, or thinking that's being a mockery. No, we're talking about food addiction. People can go from an alcohol addiction to a food addiction.
Sex addiction.
Sex addiction, we found, well, that was one that we discussed in our
second show.
Our second show, that sex addiction emerged after an alcohol habit was cleared up.
Yeah, the person had an alcohol, and this happens a lot with sex addiction. They go through alcohol, they go through drugs, they've gone through all the substances, and sex is, for the most part, free.
Right.
There isn't anything, besides another person they have to take with them, and there's plenty of people that are,
Sure. And in this article, they were kind of talking about the concept of, if you're becoming powerless over all these things, are you truly powerless over these things? Or is there a compulsory behavior that lives below the surface? And now if you can diagnose or pinpoint some of these reasons for these compulsory behaviors, it gives you another tool in your arsenal of recovery to be able to go, well, I know when I'm in these situations, I have a need to use. When I'm in these situations, I feel a need to turn to this for comfort.
Yes.
Now, if then you kind of go back to, some of the philosophy of AA of, what? If you don't want to slip, don't go somewhere slippery.
Yes. And
you'll have a better chance because you're going to actually get to the bottom of some of the triggers that get you to slip. It was a really, really cool article. And it really did, really make me look at some of this from a different light. I've been a little more educated looking into this over this last week, and I've learned quite a bit about this. I feel a lot better than some of the knowledge that I had before. It was very limited, but
well, yeah, you haven't had like a hardcore addiction. We've talked in the past. You have issues with anger that we're going to talk a little bit.
I have other addiction issues,
and you've had you had a brush with opiates just as much as I did, and it can catch you by surprise. One of the next things we'd like to talk about, even before I even go there, more on the triggers. When we're in hypnosis and even in coaching, what's really cool how hypnosis works fabulous with triggers is that when you come to us for a session, we custom design your scripts, okay? And what a script is, it's like a story. When you come into hypnosis, we get you to relax, you close your eyes, and we kind of tell you a story. We kind of take you on a guided meditation tour. And in that story, we may help you with anchors. And what anchors are, we'll say, and every time you may feel this way, you're going to put, these two fingers together, and it'll bring back this feeling that we're talking about right now, this feeling of peace or feeling of less anxiety. And through several treatments of those, that when you're having a stressful moment or you feel like you're being triggered, you can hold that pose or have that thought or go back to that anchor, and that helps greatly.
Kind of brings you back and kind of centers you.
Yes, it brings you back to that place that okay, I can take a deep breath. I don't need to do this right now, because as we know, it's a minute by minute thing.
Sure is.
And then it passes and goes on. What I'd like to talk about next is a couple of the available medications on the market that people can use today to help with you coming off of opiates. The first one is methadone, and that's probably the most well-known. I know lots of people that take methadone. It was developed in the 30s, and it's a once-a-day drug, and what it does is it counteracts the effect of the euphoric effect of heroin and other stronger opiates, where it still has a pain killing property, but it takes away that feeling of having to use more, because that's the biggest problem with the opiates. They keep making you feel like you want to have